The Kiowa Jane Doe, identified as Rebecca Boyd. Rebecca Jean Boyd was a 29-year-old mother when she was last seen in Lawton on July 26, 2002. Her estranged husband was the last person who saw her. It was he who contacted the family to say that he thought she was gone. They reported that they had not seen her either. Because of the divorce, Rebecca was temporarily living with a relative in Muskogee, which is about 200 miles away from Lawton. But she frequently returned to see her family in Lawton, and she had tried to deal with the divorce while living independently. It would be 3 years before a farmer 450 miles away in Kiowa County found a skull on his land. There was no other human bones anywhere to be found, so it was very confusing as to who the decedent was and how she got there. After examination, they decided it belonged to a woman 18 to 29 and that she had been deceased from 3 to 20 years. Facial reconstruction was done for her over the years, and they used DNA analysis to compare it to other missing women in Oklahoma. While DNA was possible in 2005, it was pretty limited in what could be done, and of course, there weren't databases like GEDmatch available to work with. Although it took 16 years, Rebecca Jean Boyd got her name back in December of 2021. Her son would go on to say it opens up more questions and isn't at all what could be considered closure.
Dalton Todd said for him, this identification is far from closure. If anything, it just leads to more questions. He tells me over a month after hearing the news, he still feels numb.
It's not any kind of closure. It's just taking the scab off.
Dalton Todd was just 9 years old when his mother Rebecca Boyd vanished. July 26th of 2002 was the last time anyone saw her in Lawton.
It's kind of numbing. You know, I've been dealing with this since I was 9, and now I'm almost 29.
In the case of Rebecca Jean Boyd, it's unclear exactly when the crime happened and where she went missing from. She was 29 when she went missing, and her son is 29 now. The odds against finding the truth are high, but they are trying really hard to solve this case. Kiowa County is 450 miles away from her hometown of Lawton, but Muskogee, where she was staying, is even farther away, around 550 miles, which is a 9-hour drive. If anyone knows anything about her movements at that time, please contact the numbers or the email on your screen. Anonymous tips are welcome. Rebecca Jean Boyd was missing for 19 years, and she went unidentified for 16. Delafield John Doe, identified as John Linberg Scott. John was a young man who was killed in Delafield after a crash that happened while fleeing from police in a stolen vehicle. He was ejected from the vehicle and died at the scene. On that day, a sheriff's deputy was parked on the side of the highway near Delafield. He saw a car speed past him and he decided to pursue. And shortly after this, the driver of the car took off for a wooded area. He ended up rolling the car. He was not wearing a seatbelt. The accident itself happened in 1977. He ended up being ejected from the car and landed 25 feet away. The police discovered that the car had been stolen from Gurnee, Illinois, which was about an hour away. The driver had no identification at all, although numerous items with the name John were found. However, the police stated they didn't know for sure if the items belonged to the car owner. There was a collection of confusing things inside the car itself. It included men's clothing, 3 sets of keys, random items like pens and notebooks, and multiple bags of women's clothing. It included a cigarette lighter that had the inscription, "To John, Love Lori," and an envelope named Scott, along with unidentified pills. The police were unable to confirm that the man in the car accident was in fact John Linberg Scott from Bristol, Tennessee. He was only identified using DNA matched from his sister Jean. I'm always so proud of the people who comment on these videos because I almost never see negative comments about the John or Jane Doe. No one knows what led this man to steal this car. In fact, there's very little information about him at all. But in the end, he paid for this specific choice with his life, which is likely a far higher cost than was ever deserved. Everybody deserves to be buried with a name, and all families deserve to know what happened to their loved one. The DNA Doe Project is the one to thank for this identification in November of 2021. John Linberg Scott went unidentified for 44 years. The Arroyo Grande Jane Doe, identified as Tammy Corrin Terrell. Tammy Terrell's life was taken 41 years ago, in 1980, sparking a case that for the police in Henderson, Nevada, was never closed and never forgotten. Tammy's case has been the focus of social media campaigns looking for her name. They even thought they found it once, but it wasn't her. When x-rays, fingerprints, and dental samples led to nothing, they hit a brick wall. In the 80s and 90s, there was no DNA processing like we have now. And they also embalmed or boiled bones, which destroys the ability to get their DNA, meaning they had to wait much longer for technology to catch up. Over the years, there weren't any real leads. She had been stabbed in the back and hit with a hammer. She had a homemade S tattoo on her right arm. The police took it to heart to try to solve it. Detective Williams said he would never not work on it, because the police were basically the only family she had. The same detective has visited her grave annually with his wife, the same woman who helped him raise the money for the grave and headstone all those years before. In a very real way, she had become like family to Detective Williams. So often we cover cases where the police refuse to take a missing persons report. It's encouraging to find cases like this where law enforcement cares so much and they never stop trying to right the wrong. Even retiring didn't stop Detective Williams in his quest to find out who she was. Tammy was found wearing no clothes, face down, along Route 146 highway near Henderson, Nevada. Like far too many women we have covered on this channel, she was tossed from a vehicle without a thought. Although Tammy was found without any clothing, there was no signs of assault. They knew Tammy was 5'2" and weighed around 100 pounds with red hair and green eyes. But that about summed up all the information that they had. Once they had DNA and the picture of Tammy Terrell showed up, Detective Ebert, who was now officially working the case, showed up at Williams' home to show him Tammy's picture. Detective Williams said he knew immediately they had solved the case and that it was her. They have finally solved it, 15 years after he retired. I held off covering this case in hopes I could reveal more about Tammy, but unfortunately there isn't much more publicly known other than a paragraph about her life and one photo. She has sisters who are still alive and are thankful to know what happened to Tammy. She was last seen in Roswell, New Mexico, a week prior to being found. She was seen there with an unidentified man and woman who had claimed to be following a state fair as it moved from city to city. Anyone with any information on this case, please call the Henderson Police Department. The number is listed on your screen. Tammy Corrin Terrell went unidentified for 41 years. The Winnebago County John Doe, identified as Roland Klug. The Winnebago County Sheriff's Office was called when partial remains were found near a set of railroad tracks in Vinland, Wisconsin, on April 29, 2015. It took 6.5 years, but DNA finally identified the decedent as Roland Klug, who was 65 at the time he passed away. It is one of those cases that authorities originally thought would be pretty easy to solve. They had DNA, and it wasn't an unusual thing to use by 2015. They even had partial dental films. It turns out that Roland wasn't ever reported missing because his family had no idea he was missing. Roland lived a somewhat transient life, and it was normal for him to drop out for 5 years at a time, and then just show back up. In fact, that's not all that unusual in a lot of the Doe cases. It's hard to report someone missing when you don't know they're missing, when missing for them is normal. In this case, they believed Roland was living somewhere in the South and expected him to show up eventually. This case was solved thanks to Othram Incorporated of Texas, who analyzed his DNA and built a genealogical profile. According to a doctor with Othram jumps in when most cases have hit a brick wall. When CODIS testing didn't work, Othram creates links that would lead the sheriff to request DNA from different people within the tree in order to narrow down possibilities. Roland's family told authorities he was born in the Waupun area of Wisconsin in 1949. He served in the Vietnam War. The sheriff's office didn't say how he died. It was believed to be natural causes. Roland Klug went unidentified for 6 years. The Davy Jane Doe, identified as Carolyn Dunn Moody. Carolyn was just 21 and a mother of a small child when she went missing from Indianola, Mississippi in 1974. Parabon Nanolabs can be thanked for this one. Cece Moore, the lead genetic genealogist, spent an extensive amount of time trying to find her identity. Cece herself built dozens of family trees until she started to narrow it down to a specific family. Carolyn's daughter, Edna, had been looking for a mother for years, never knowing that Carolyn had been found in December of '75, nearly 1,000 miles away in Davie, Florida, about 5 months after she went missing from Mississippi. In fact, unbeknownst to her family, Carolyn was found one day before what would have been her 22nd birthday. She had been found inside of a canal, and while they couldn't pinpoint what happened to her, they ruled it as a homicide. Her daughter Edna spoke at a press conference in December of 2021, saying, "I just thank God. I now know. All these years I was just trying to search for her, but I'm just thankful. She's in my heart." Periodically, over the years, they tried to discover Carolyn's name, releasing composites and hoping someone would recognize her. They believed she was white, 5'5" and 125 pounds, with brown eyes and brown or auburn hair. She had been wearing blue platform shoes, a white puka shell necklace, and a silver ring with a blue stone. Anyone with any information on this case, please contact the Broward County Medical Examiner's Office or Crime Stoppers. Carolyn Dunn Moody went unidentified for 45 years. She was found 987 miles away from where she went missing.
Thanks everyone for watching and listening. If you haven't yet, hit the subscribe button. We have new episodes every Monday and Thursday. And don't forget, life can change on a dime. So take care of yourselves and each other.